The warning comes as U.S. President Donald Trump continues military positioning in the Middle East. They should know that if they start a war this time, it will be a regional war, the 86-year-old supreme leader said, according to state media reports. Khamenei has held absolute power in Iran for 37 years, making him the ultimate decision maker on matters of war and peace. The statement is among the strongest warnings issued by Iran's top authority during the current tensions. The framing of any potential conflict as regional rather than bilateral emphasizes Iran's messaging that consequences would extend beyond its borders. Khamenei accused the U.S. of seeking Iran's oil and gas resources, a claim made in state media coverage. This framing positions American pressure as motivated by resource extraction rather than nuclear or security concerns, according to Tehran's characterization. Khamenei's warning comes at a moment of elevated military activity in the region. Trump said the U.S. is moving a large armada toward Iran, and Iran's Revolutionary Guard naval forces conducted live-fire exercises in the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend. The timing of the Supreme Leader's speech during anniversary events marking the 1979 Islamic Revolution reflects Iranian efforts to project strength and defiance during a period of both external pressure and internal tensions. U.S. Central Command has called on Iran's Revolutionary Guard to avoid dangerous and escalatory behavior during exercises in the Strait. The exchange of warnings between American military officials and Iranian leadership illustrates the elevated stakes of the current standoff. Reports from multiple international outlets say U.S. carrier strike groups and other assets are moving toward the region, which analysts say reflects readiness rather than a stated intent to launch operations. The military positioning creates the backdrop for Khamenei's warning about regional war. Khamenei's speech also occurs against a backdrop of significant domestic tensions in Iran. Protests that began in late December, according to Al Jazeera and other outlets, have reportedly morphed into nationwide expressions of anger over various grievances. The protests reportedly began over economic issues linked to local mismanagement and corruption, as well as the collapse of Iran's currency amid sanctions imposed by the U.S. and its allies, according to Al Jazeera reporting. The demonstrations subsequently expanded to include anger over curtailed personal and social freedoms, an acute energy and water crisis, and severe air pollution. The scope and death toll of the protests remain disputed. UN officials and rights groups cite high death tolls, but figures and circumstances remain disputed and unverified. Iranian authorities maintain that terrorists armed and funded by the U.S. and Israel were responsible for killings, according to state media. This characterization is rejected by international observers and opposition groups. The casualty figures from the protests are sharply disputed between different sources. A UN special rapporteur suggested fatalities may be significantly higher than official figures as more information emerges, according to Al Jazeera reporting. U.S.-based activists cite figures in the thousands and claim they are investigating additional cases, according to the reporting. Other sources cite even higher figures. These figures have not been independently verified and represent claims from opposition sources. State media reported lower casualty figures than opposition sources without independent verification. The gap between government figures and opposition claims illustrates the contested information environment surrounding the protests. Iranian officials said they plan to release details about those killed without giving a timeline, according to Al Jazeera reporting. The government also sent a text message to Iranians saying the move will counter what it called fake claims and figures. The Iranian government has sent text messages to citizens as part of its response to the protests and international pressure. One message referenced plans to release information about those killed. State messaging hinted at possible social policy adjustments, according to reporting, without confirmed legal changes. Iran's laws have restricted women from riding motorcycles, while the state continues to impose a mandatory dress code. One-way text messages cannot wash away the blood. Many Iranians are in mourning, an Iranian woman told Al Jazeera, according to the reporting. The quote reflects skepticism about government defiant messaging among some Iranians. The government's communication strategy combines promises of transparency with defiant messaging toward external adversaries. Whether these efforts address underlying grievances remains questioned by those quoted in international reporting. Inside the Iranian parliament, familiar images were witnessed on Sunday as hardline lawmakers once again donned IRGC uniforms and chanted "Death to America" with clenched fists, according to Al Jazeera reporting. The scene reflects the defiant posture of Iran's political establishment. The move came following EU discussions and calls to designate the IRGC, an action that has been debated but not formally adopted. Tehran responded by prescribing the bloc's armed forces in a reciprocal measure. The IRGC, originally created shortly after the Iranian Revolution to protect the fledgling theocratic establishment, has since transformed into a military powerhouse that also controls large parts of the Iranian economy. The organization's dual role makes it central to both Iranian security and domestic politics. Such moves will not only fail to help with regional peace and security, but will also make the path of constructive engagement and coordination harder, the IRGC said in a statement on Sunday in response to the EU discussions, according to reporting. Iranian officials are holding events across the country to mark the revolution's anniversary and bolster its defiant messaging, according to Al Jazeera reporting. The events combine commemoration with projection of military strength. Troops from the IRGC and the army, joined by the police and other security personnel, marched on the streets of Tehran on Sunday in an apparent show of strength, according to the reporting. Soldiers on motorcycles led a parade from Mehrabad Airport to the Behesht-e-Zahra Cemetery, where Ayatollah Khamenei delivered his first speech in 1979. Soldiers were also photographed at Khamenei's mausoleum in Tehran as they renewed their covenant with the goals and ideals of the revolution, according to state media coverage. The imagery connects current tensions to the revolutionary founding narrative. Officials organizing the 10-day event marking the revolution's anniversary said large demonstrations will be held on February 11th across the country, according to reporting. In his speech, Khamenei claimed millions attended pro-government rallies while only thousands protested, according to state media coverage. This characterization represents the government's narrative about relative public support. This characterization of the protest scale contrasts sharply with international reporting and opposition claims about the breadth of demonstrations. The framing reflects the government's narrative that popular support remains with the establishment. Meanwhile, Iranian state television and other affiliated networks continue to broadcast programs condemning what they call the riots, according to Al Jazeera reporting. The media coverage shapes domestic perception of the events. A similar show on OFOG, an IRGC-affiliated television channel, allegedly mocked the protesters, triggering angry online reactions and forcing the authorities to sack the channel's director, according to the reporting. The incident illustrates tensions over how the protests are portrayed. "They are only throwing more salt on our wounds," a young student told Al Jazeera, requesting anonymity due to safety concerns. "They say all our youth were killed by terrorists, then go ahead and mock the people who laid down their lives on state television." The quote reflects anger among some Iranians about government and media characterization of the protests and those who died. The request for anonymity indicates the risks of speaking critically to foreign media. The gap between state media narratives and the experiences of those who participated in or lost family members during the protests represents a significant domestic tension. How the government addresses these grievances may affect internal stability. The combination of external military pressure and internal social tensions creates a complex environment for Iranian leadership. Khamenei's warning about regional war occurs against this backdrop of domestic and international challenges. Khamenei's warning that any attack would result in a regional war reflects Iran's long-standing deterrence messaging. The framing implies that conflict would not remain limited to Iranian territory, but would involve other actors and territories across the Middle East. This messaging is consistent with Iranian doctrine, emphasizing that its network of regional relationships, including with groups in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, provides asymmetric response options. The warning aims to raise perceived costs of military action. Whether Iranian capabilities match the scope of the warning cannot be determined from public statements. Iranian state media regularly describes various military capabilities, but these represent Tehran's messaging rather than independently verified assessments. The regional war framing also serves domestic purposes, positioning the current tensions as part of a broader struggle rather than isolated Iranian defiance. This narrative connects to revolutionary ideology about resistance to foreign powers. Trump said the U.S. is moving a larger naval force toward Iran, describing it as a large armada or flotilla. Hopefully we'll make a deal, Trump said, according to reported comments. If we do make a deal, that's good. If we don't make a deal, we'll see what happens. Trump's comments combine military positioning with expressed hope for diplomatic resolution. The framing presents military buildup as leverage for negotiation while maintaining pressure on Tehran. Then it's peace through strength, Trump said, according to reported comments. We don't want to use them, but if we have to use them, we will. The statement emphasizes deterrence while maintaining threat credibility. The exchange of warnings, Khamenei promising regional war, Trump emphasizing overwhelming force, represents the rhetorical dimension of the current standoff. Whether rhetoric translates to action depends on decisions yet to be made. Military positioning and diplomatic engagement proceed in parallel during the current crisis. Turkey has offered to mediate between the U.S. and Iran during talks with Iranian officials, according to Reuters and other reporting. According to the pro-government Hurriyet newspaper, Erdogan's proposal for a trilateral summit was portrayed as positively received by Trump, but no official confirmation has been issued by the White House. The diplomatic track continues alongside military preparations. Regional powers have engaged with both Washington and Tehran, urging restraint. The multilateral diplomatic activity reflects widespread concern about where the current trajectory might lead and the potential for regional escalation. Khamenei's warning about regional war adds weight to these concerns. The possibility that conflict could spread beyond Iranian borders affects calculations in multiple capitals across the Middle East. Iran faces dual pressures as the current crisis continues. Externally, U.S. military positioning and international sanctions create security and economic challenges. Internally, protests and disputed government responses create domestic tensions. Khamenei's speech addressed both dimensions, warning external adversaries about the costs of attack while framing domestic dissent as foreign-backed terrorism. This dual messaging reflects the establishment's strategy for managing concurrent challenges. For observers tracking the situation, key uncertainties include